Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of Future Proof, the podcast where we're talking to founders and leaders in the B2B and SaaS world about how emerging tech is changing the landscape of business. And if you're looking to future-proof your business, you're definitely in the right place. And before we jump into today's episode, for everybody that follows us, we're Deploy AI. We build revenue growth systems for B2B SaaS companies. Our system's called RevOS. And if you're looking for more information, just want to talk to us about RevOS, we'd love to have a 15-minute chat with you to see how it can move the needle in your business. There'll be links in the show notes to book that call. But anyway, let's jump into today's episode. I am joined today by Rebecca Whitney from Advisory9. So Rebecca, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Brent. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So, hey, let's jump right in. Let's talk about your background and as we call the leader's journeys.
Man, it is definitely like that. Maybe some circular references in there even. I actually started out even before Advisory9 and data and analytics background in the military. So actually my first data related job was typing in the addresses of the 20,000 troops who were shifting from one base to another. And from there on, data technology, it just became so much a part of my career. I started Advisory9 about 6 or 7 years ago, and it really started as consulting. People wanted to have somebody who understood systems and technology, but also marketing, because those things, as you know, have just kind of come together. You really can't pull one from the other. And eventually that grew into, I saw a need for companies who needed a chief marketing officer, but maybe didn't have that budget quite yet, right? That can be 300,000 plus. So I started doing fractional chief marketing officer work, and I started working with businesses. I actually work with businesses around the world, UK, US, Canada, Australia, focus mostly on financial services, but can serve anybody and really serving on their team. So which is unique. You have the agencies and you have full-time employees, and that fractional is really serving the gap in between. So I get to be in the doors, inside the rooms, having the deep conversations about what's working and not working, and then help see them through those, whatever their next steps are. Often really looking for big scale, typically 5 to 10x.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And it's exactly why we built RevOS. So we'll explain that down the road. But it's the same reason is these companies want to grow faster. And so talk to us about what you've seen in the industry changing over the last few years, especially, and then we'll get into emerging tech.
Yeah, absolutely. In the last few years, I see several things actually. We have more data than ever. And I think most companies still feel like they don't know what to do with that information. I think that has been a trend that as data has gotten more volume, the wisdom, the insight, the what to do with it next still has not, it still has a tough time catching up. So
just before you go off of that topic, right? So that's been a common theme throughout the podcast and all of my guests, right, that are sitting in those chairs from the founders. The theme that we came up with is people feel like they're data rich and insight poor. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I do. I think there's very few companies with the time, attention, or budget needed to really take that on. And I was lucky to serve the top tier banks and Fortune 1000 companies for about the first 20 years of my career. And while there can still be time and resource constraints in those companies, they also have already prioritized that. And so they've already have teams developed or teams dedicated. And in these companies that I'm working with that are often, there may be 5 to 20 million annual revenue US comparatively, but they're looking to get to 100 million plus in short order. Picking that as a priority and really sticking through the time it takes to get there, most don't have the patience for that.
Yeah. So I didn't want to stop you on that. I just wanted to make sure that for the audience that's something that we've been hitting on. But what else are you seeing changing?
The prioritization is harder than ever, right? It's easier than ever to do marketing right now, but harder than ever to get it right. And harder than ever to pick the things that work for your company, your team. it somewhat comes back to the data, right?
Yeah.
If you see what's working, you can lean into it. If you don't know what's working, or if it's noisy, if you lack real statistician focused people on the team who can point to like noise versus signal, if you don't have that person,
Yep.
you can, you can kind of fall for anything, and so I watch people kind of take, oh, we need to be doing everything possible in SEO right now because AI is taking over SEO. And you're like, and it feels like you're attempting to skate to the puck, but I'll use a hockey analogy, not sure audience wise it, but it's almost like 3 seconds too late all the time, so it's like, and you got the whole team doing it instead of 1 or 2 people. So I see a lot of lack of prioritization, long to-do lists, sometimes that don't have the strategy. And if I could change one thing that I see, it's the visionary owner CEO tossing things over the wall to just create sometimes havoc within the teams that further derail them.
I agree with that one. Reading the latest, C-suite magazine or whatever, seeing an idea, throwing it to the team, and now you take them all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so really focusing on annual planning, quarterly planning, and having protective enough leaders that can run that balance, right? That knows when when a play has to be called differently is really important. So I find, and I work with I really enjoy the companies I am working with, but I have been a part of companies where that has led to burnout, attrition of really good employees. And so I find it's one of my key aspects I try to train on. If I'm working with a company, it's like my best companies that get the best results do or don't do these things. And I try to make sure that that's on that list early.
I love that. That's fantastic. So you walk in kind of with as the fractional CMO, you walk in with your kind of checklist or playbook of, hey, this is how we have to resnap and reprioritize.
Exactly. And it's taken me a while to get there and to find what is doable, reusable across different industries and across different companies, and what things I need to be flexible on, because they could have things that are working better. Finding how to get those quick wins in, finding out how to be bold and strong when you come in, but also being the listening type and really open to new things. I don't know. None of us will ever know everything. And so being key to really hear something new or a new way of doing things has been one of the most fun, but most difficult parts of being a fractional CMO.
Amen to that. I can definitely see that. So when you are working with your clients and they want to go from, if they're in the 5 to 20 million range and they want to go to 100 million, right? Where do they start? First off, what issues do you see when you walk in where they're just not on track to get there? And then how do you kind of help them course correct?
Great question. I feel like that could be an endless topic, but the key ones I'm going to talk about often, it is the long-term. What does that look like? What makes up, let's say it's a $10 million to $100 million company.
Right.
What's the roadmap? And do you have the products? Is this really just a doubling down on what's already working or quadrupling down on what it's working? Is this new product development? Is this new product packaging and pricing? Do you have an idea of how you're going to get there? And I've worked with companies at it's kind of standing out with each one of those where they say, hey, we just really think we need to optimize our sales process, make sure our marketing's working, optimize our sales process, maybe throw some other salespeople at it and we can get to the 10X. Whereas there are a lot that just haven't thought that through. They're making, $20 million annual and maybe that's working, but without developing something entirely new or going for a near vertical, expanding in some way. I see the biggest issue I see with that scalability is the true vision to get there, not by one person, because there's always one person who thinks they know how it's the collective of a leadership team, right? At the 5 to 10 million, one of the biggest things you can do is have a cohesive 5 dysfunctions of the team have already been worked out type of company, which is a great book by Patrick Lencioni, by the way. You've already gone through that and you are ready to get to that next level. So those are the main two. From there is the discipline and the willingness to get into the systems of how you're going to get there. What does that look like year to year? What does that look like quarter to quarter? How will you know you're on track? And then ensuring the team has the budget they need. So I've seen companies need to fully invest in a whole new tech stack in order to make that really work. And then hold back that money, but still expect to get to that result. And that's just a few. Yeah.
There's always that budget topic, right? And so, and that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. It's like, how how passionate are they to get to that number, right? And because it does take investment, right, in people and in systems. Yeah. So the way what I heard it's strategy, right? First, right. Again, what is the strategy to get us there? Because that everything comes from that. Do we have to add another product? Do we need to add a new vertical, right? Or new audience to go after, an ICP, or do we need to, like you said, double down on what's working now, right? So that strategy is number one. Number two is systems, right? If I heard you right. And then number three is really execution and tracking.
And tracking. Absolutely. Yeah. It's the having those forward-looking key points that you have to hit, or you have to reiterate. You have to iterate, not reiterate. You have to find out what isn't working early enough so that you can get ahead of that and make the appropriate changes. And those really are the key ones that I see. Everything, all the systems underneath it. I went through at one company I was at, it was actually a public company, and we put out a 21 piece project, 21 project charters that were needed to help get us to our growth goals. Wow. And so, that's going to take an amount of time, an amount of coordination, an amount of just discipline that, you have to look at, when you look at budget, it's budget of time and money, and, making sure you're willing. Yeah. And now a lot, we can hold off on an AI conversation, but a lot of folks I talk to who may not even be clients, they just want AI to help get them there. And, if you still haven't, now, if you haven't done those other things, AI is not going to help with any of it. So
I always think of AI as, we call them digital coworkers, but to me, AI is your co-pilot, right? It's not meant to replace your strategist. It's not meant to replace your system. It's meant to enhance all of that, right? And make them way more efficient. And I think that's getting lost with people and are you seeing that too? Is it misalignment of what they think the expectations are?
It really is. I mean, I've talked about automation for years because that's being in the data oriented. I did direct mail and email marketing. And I am now having to explain to people, they want to make the jump from chaos to AI. And you have to go from
you want to bring your chaos into AI? That's not a good thing.
And I'm like, that's like the worst possible thing we could do. So engaging them in a way that's like, okay, let's take chaos to order. Then let's take order to automation, and then let's take automation to AI, or AI to automation.
Yeah.
That's where the power is. And
100%.
If you're okay hanging out, and your business has been okay hanging out in that chaos area, getting to order is really, it's painful.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of sacred cows, a lot of kicking and screaming, a lot of the things. And so I've now actually, and I won't maybe be able to remember all these, but I have these kind of 4 levels of what type of change are you really looking for? Are you looking for the change where, this is kind of my level 1 change, where everybody's doing what they're currently doing, you're just helping them do it a little more efficiently?
Yep.
Is there like a second level where it's like, we're okay changing a process or so here or there, but not greatly disrupting? Right. Are you willing to bring in kind of new tech and new systems, or do you want to wipe it all out and find the best possible operating system for your business? And those 4 levels, when I explain them to somebody who wants rapid change, I quickly find out they really want to be in level 1 or 2. They want the level 4.
Right. Don't touch my stuff. And that's the problem, right? With people, right? The humans sometimes are the biggest obstacles to this. They're like, hey, I want AI, but don't change anything that I'm doing. Okay. Yeah.
Right. I still want to see everything, or I still want to, and granted, again, you're talking to people that are currently in chaos, and that's how they're operating, right? They're operating in this, I need to see everything because I don't have a system that I can rely on that's going to get consistent results or be in my tone or whatever that hang up is that they have with something.
And Rebecca, we used to call that with all my clients, because my whole background is management consulting for a long time. And we called it the hero complex, right? The hero mentality, right? Because it makes people feel good when everyone has to come to them. The problem is it's one of the most inefficient things that could happen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And they either thrive on it, or they can't. To your point, that hero complex is there, or they've never really been coached on how to properly delegate or leverage before. And they just find themselves disappointed. It's a loop, and they can't seem to quite get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we do is we make people kind of map out in a sequence their their process and then tell us where the most painful parts are and say, to get them to adopt into AI and just say, hey, or automations, right? And just let's fix this one thing or these two things in this process. And then the light bulb goes off. Oh my God, I didn't know I didn't have to spend half my day doing that grunt work, right?
Exactly.
And, right. It's not this magic bullet that just goes and fixes the whole thing. It's like, hey, let's figure out where all the bottlenecks are and let's start there. Right.
Yeah.
I totally
we have a
get
very similar process to that. I love to map it out, put on red, yellow, green lights, like what's naturally, yellow because you're jumping systems and anything can happen there. And it can be a lot of fun. And then when the wins are there, they're big. And I had somebody, I do a weekly newsletter, and he had read something I'd talked about, took it to his team and saved like 10 hours of an overnight process they were doing every night. He just needed enough inspiration and probably some permission to just focus on one thing. Because again, I think everybody feels like they just, if you're not fully in AI right now, you're somehow, decades behind. And that may be true very quickly, but that doesn't mean just run out and put it into everything. And I did a full conversation about, a system should save you serious time, energy, and money. And anything you're putting in place, if you can't point to where that's already going to happen and it's not pretty significant, then that's probably not the right place for you to be focusing your time. So break it down until you can find something that does save you that couple of hours a day, a week, et cetera.
Yeah. It's funny. I know that people need efficiency and systems reimagination and almost to, again, you would always want to start from scratch if you could, but most people don't do that, right? But it's funny that because that's so much more down in the organization, it's not what gets people to start to do these engagements, right? And I don't know if you're seeing this, but it's why we talk about revenue, or RevOS is revenue growth, because it's what the C-suite wants to talk about. Once you're in, right? Like when you get into one of your jobs, then you can start to go to that next level down and start to talk to them about their systems and their inefficiencies, right? But it's so funny. Like I would think people would want, because the smartest place to start with AI to me is that if you want to dip your toe, is go fix some bottlenecks and some inefficient process.
Absolutely.
But it's not the sexy thing, right? And so it's crazy. Again, marketing 101, right? What do they get excited about? And it's usually not that, but it's what they need the most. Do you see that the same way?
Percent. And, I find a lot of what I'm just doing is looking for the spreadsheet. That's usually my clue as to where something is not happening the way it should happen. And but that is not a conversation, to your point, at the senior leadership team. They're just looking for those leading indicators to suddenly be, pointing to all things are great, or they are looking to, have a plan. It reminds me of an agency that's innovative and new, but tried and tested. It's like that balance all the time. And it's like, I can't give you both of those, right? We have to find somewhere in between. But you're absolutely right. The forensics of it is where the traction comes from. It's when you are looking for that. So what's nice about coming in as a fractional person on the team, as a fractional CMO, I actually have some leeway to take a little bit of time and to start working from the bottom up in some cases. So that's why I get to find those rogue spreadsheets and say, okay, what is this data? Why is it here? Why is it not in the system? Why is it not automated? And then we can go from there and start showing some of that. So I might have a 2 or 3 month headway on somebody coming in that's just on a project basis, as an example.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. So a couple last questions. One is, as you do an 18-month lookout, because again, none of us know how fast AI is going to keep accelerating. It's amazing, some of the jumps that people don't realize that has happened. What do you see, right, coming down in the next 18 months? And do you see adoption happening faster, and where?
The thing I see, and I don't know why this came to mind when you asked this question, is confusion and snake oil salesmen for a bit. So that is a bit of a challenge for almost everybody that I would serve as a client. And otherwise, I am sure your inbox is filled with these. It's all the things that everybody swears they can do now in AI. And so there is a hump of that I think we're going to have.
The hype cycle has to.
The hype cycle. The hype cycle will happen, and it'll be focused on things that uninformed outsiders might think they can come in and just plug things in. You and I know, when you go deep with a client, you realize the nuances and the compliance issues they may have depending on industry, and the change management, which apparently everyone has forgotten about lately, and how you have to take people along on the journey with you. You can't just run ahead and say, meet me up there. They're never going to come. And if you're a decent sized company, you're not going to just connect everything you have to ChatGPT and think you're going to fix it. It's not how it works. Right. It's not how it works. Right. And, and most people, so I am seeing that just probably a 12 to 18 month cycle through of people getting really excited. And I've done this, tools and this thing, it plugs in and does this. And we've stopped thinking, what do we need? And so we're going to come back to what do we really need? What do we need as a company in order to reach these goals? And that's part of the storyline I like putting together, is like, let's look at that and then write your software requirements, whether they become a custom software or a plugin. But I do think in the middle of that, or just after that, we will really start seeing more of a bottom up suggestions around AI. I think right now it's a lot of top down, it's the leader being somewhere, reading something. And while most users are maybe like, I made an image on ChatGPT, that's my cat, they're dabbling in it. But I think they're going to start realizing that they can push up value in the company and really drive change that actually does help them have a more balanced work life, that does help them be. That's the part that everyone's missing, is how much better their job would be morale wise if they didn't have to do the crap work, right? That they hate doing, but they just, like you said, it's just how they've always done. They don't know any different. Right. So as soon as they start putting together real pieces, which is one of the favorite things I like to do, is, hey, let's talk to the whole team. Let's get them thinking AI first. Because as soon as they're doing that, even if we're not giving them ways to work within it, if they're thinking of it and we give them permission to do it within whatever sandboxes are safely possible for that entity, somewhere those two things are going to come together. And if you've done both of them well, if you've done that strategy work and have order out of chaos, and you're working as a company, then when your employees are coming up and they're learning and they're doing self-development around anything from prompt engineering to, use cases or development, now you can, these no code. I would have loved that at the time I had developed, right? Been able to show my idea already kind of ready and ready to go to the next step. So I think that's going to be a really wonderful time for the companies who are getting that leadership right starting now. So if you can ignore the noise, know what you need and only you need, and not buy into the hype of everybody around, and train your team to be really thinking of AI first while you're getting your AI act together as an entity. That's going to be a really where they kind of come together from the top, right? And they're not always going to just be perfect, right? Which is okay. But I think the last thing I'll say about that is that our big mantra here is, and we try to tell everybody that comes on the podcast, everybody watches the podcast, AI is not IT. And so what that means is that if you're the head of marketing, you're the head of HR, you're the head of finance, you no longer have to wait on IT to fix every problem and build you new systems. You now, with AI, can have your internal team be empowered to fix problems faster, right, within their department. And that is the thing that I think is the least resonated message that I have seen in throughout. Chase, well, he's on mute, but I think we've done 175 episodes so far. And these are the themes we're pulling out so we can publish to leaders, right? And you're seeing it firsthand with your clients. Yeah, absolutely. I think that is absolutely spot on. That, to your point, it's not always going to match up perfectly, and you're going to have the rogue employee who feels like they've gone too far. But for almost everybody I could think of talking to, outside of a few industries that have to be really safety and compliant, mostly that's going to pull you along. Mostly that's going to cause inspiration, and really, really leaning into that and finding ways to reward it, ensuring your training and development plans are really giving them space, even going back to like the Google Skunkworks at one point in time. I'm not saying to do, but make sure you're thinking about this as a business owner. How can I create that sense of creativity and space and wonder that is needed, no matter how serious or fun of I've worked in agencies and I've worked in, corporations, I've done everything in between. You can create that no matter what type of company you are. And now more than ever, your employees need it, because you're going to need them, even with AI.
Totally agreed. All right, last question. If I gave you a magic wand and you could fix one thing, you do that for your clients, what would you use that magic wand with AI?
And it's possible. I know this is possible, but my magic wand would really have a completely customized prioritization model for every client based on real-time feedback, real-time data.
Yeah.
And would give them confidence, which I think is if nothing else, it's the confidence that people need.
Yeah.
You can, confidently get results in somewhat incorrect ways. Sometimes I've done it myself, but man, if they could have that real roadmap, because even for me, I'm just really pulling out what's in people's minds and thoughts and ideas, and we are using data and we are using some of the insights, but to have that kind of, I've even are you a company that has a storefront? Are you a company that has a headquarters only? Are you a company that has trucks on the road? Those are 3 different thoughts that need to go into any marketing plan. And so just really, I have identified at least 25 really rare thoughts about businesses and business structure that I think goes into this model. So I would love the time and money to get that to a space where I could use that with my own clients and share that with the world.
I love it. That's fantastic. Rebecca, thank you for spending time with us, for sharing your insights. This has been really fun, and I love what you do. So this is like dear to my heart. So it's fantastic.
You as well, Brent. Thank you for having me. It's been a blast. Really great to get to know you better.
Yeah, you too.
So advisory9.com, the number is available. You can go there. You can subscribe to my weekly newsletter at the bottom of that. That's a lot of fun. I always tell a fun story, including losing my passport recently, but also great insights on tools and technology. Yeah. And then on any social media that I think matters, I'm Rebwe9. So first 3 first name, first 3 last name, Rebwe9, and you can find me there.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And guys, that wraps up this episode of Future Proof. Like I said, if you're looking to future proof your business, this is the place for you. Just keep listening, because we have phenomenal guests like Rebecca that share insights, and it's how you really figure out where AI fits into your business. Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. See you soon.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.